Well, good evening, and thank you for your interest in I Have Never Failed, my most recent collection of short stories. You've clearly managed to navigate the QR code thing. I call it a live book, and the idea is as a result of an evolution of thoughts that goes something like this. It all starts with storytelling, because everyone is a storyteller, everyone has a story to tell. Things like our height, weight, the color of our skin, orientation, all of those things are hardwired. But the stories we tell, who we tell them to, how we tell them, and by my way of thinking, the stories that we choose not to tell, speak to our sensitivities, our belief, our values. That and our actions while we're on earth will ultimately be our legacy. My dad was a construction worker. My family farmed. I grew up in a small town in central Illinois. Around a campfire, sitting on the tailgate of a pickup truck or in a fishing boat on Saturday morning, storytelling was lifestyle. The idea of organized storytelling didn't come along till a couple of years ago when I wandered into the High Noon Saloon for a Monday night edition of the Madison Moth Story Slam. Now, my idea was to sit in the back row, listen and learn, become a better storyteller and a better writer. The extent to which I have succeeded in that regard, I am not qualified to judge. But what I have come away with is an amazing group of friends and a perspective much broader than Jefferson County, Wisconsin. Well, eventually, I threw my hat in the ring and made my way to the stage. I told stories that were based on the chapters of the books that I have written. My process was I would write a rough draft, a script, if you will, and then rehearse it to the windshield of my pickup truck between farm calls. Well, as you know it, mid-March, in-person storytelling and in-person life as we know it came to a screeching halt. The author to whom I aspire, Michael Perry, to keep us entertained and sane, started posting stories, one a day on Facebook. I thought, well, I can do that, but I don't have as many good stories as Mike does. So once or twice a week, I'd go out back at sunset, kind of like I am now, down by the lake or in the cab of my pickup truck, and I'd tell the story to the back of my phone and record it to a YouTube video. Well, eventually, also this spring, I finally accumulated a stack of chapters tall enough to make a respectable book. So I called my publisher, Kristen Mitchell of Little Creek Press. I asked her if we might be able to slip some of those scripts for the stories from the Moth events between the chapters of the book. Well, she either thought it was a good idea or just figured I was going to do it anyway, so she agreed. So my next thought was, man, wouldn't it be neat if we could somehow get people from those scripts hidden in the book to these YouTube videos? Hence came QR codes. So throughout this book, you're going to find some of those funny little boxes. When you see them, just turn your phone to camera mode and wave them over. Next thing you know, I'll be there telling you a story. So my friend Scott Cluis calls me the Hick. He says, Hick, we are all full of contradictions. Don't think for a minute that it's lost on me that the book that has a 4,000 word chapter railing on the deleterious effect of technology also has QR codes and YouTube videos embedded in it. So the title, I have never failed, but I have extensive experience with things that definitively do not work. Well, the title of my first book was In Harriet's Shadow. The second was Stepping from Harriet's Shadow. I kind of thought I had worn the James Harriet Association thin, so I needed to find something else that spoke to the contents of my book. So I thought about tailwinded. I liked the fact that it wasn't recognized by spell check. And I had two parents who asked only two questions. Did you do your best in any given situation, and how can we help? And for the past 10 years, by my side has been a woman who is beautiful and accountable, loves me and respects me exactly as I am. Therefore, I am tailwinded. She is also my voice of reason, and she thought tailwinded sounded like too much like long-winded, and that was entirely too close to the truth. So I moved on. In 55 years, I've come to realize I am guided by a pretty tight group of axioms. Things like anything in extremes is bad. It's better to keep your mouth shut and let them wander than to speak and prove that you are a fool. There's no end to what people can accomplish if they don't care who gets the credit. There is no such thing as bad weather, just a poor choice of clothes. Well, I worked hard and I couldn't force any of those into a 4-word title for a book, so I moved on. And that's when I came across I Have Never Failed. Well, if ever there's been a case of double entendre, multiple entendre, this is it. At the most literal level, early in Corona, I set about the business of building a patio table out of Brazilian ironwood. I had that thing assembled and torn apart no fewer than 4 times. If you look at it, you can see that the putty doesn't exactly match the color of the stain, and you can see a little bit of the brass leaking through on the sides. But you could park a Caterpillar D8 bulldozer on that thing and it wouldn't sag. The wind will never blow it. The deck is attached to the underlayment with no fewer than 250 screws, and I didn't poke one of them all the way through. Now, anybody with skills would have knocked that project out in a weekend. Took me close to 3 months, but we ate breakfast out there yesterday morning. I have never failed. I'm a till death do us part guy, but I've been divorced. An experience that I emerged from infinitely stronger and more independent. I had to repeat my first year of veterinary school. As a result, I never fail to appreciate a day in the practice of veterinary medicine. The other thing about I have never failed, it's the central tenet of a discipline called positive psychology. Professor Angela Duckworth has consulted with school systems, the United States Army, and the Seattle Seahawks. She literally wrote the book Grit. In her research, she has concluded that one of the biggest single determinants as to whether people succeed or fail is a difference in their decision-making style, how it is that they handle the exact same set of events. For example, I get called to a farm to deliver a calf. I work as hard as I can. I employ every trick I've ever learned in 28 years of veterinary practice, and still the calf doesn't make it. I can cuss under my breath while I'm gathering up my materials and climb back in the truck thinking that I am a disgrace to veterinary medicine, the most worthless hack that's ever pulled on a pair of green coveralls. I should never be allowed to set foot on a dairy farm again as long as I live. The pessimistic decision-making style. The optimistic decision-making style, I gather up my stuff and cuss under my breath and think, okay, that was a bummer. Where did I go wrong? What could I have done differently? How could I have gotten a live calf out of that situation? So the subtitle of this book is Stories on Resilience, Second Chances, and the Fine Art of Bullshit. If I were to boil down my way of thinking to exactly one philosophy, it would be this. In any given situation, if I have done all I can in my power, physically, mentally, spiritually, to affect an outcome, I can accept what comes next. As a result, I have never failed. So, whatever you do, keep something moving forward.